Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Build Computers. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Phanteks P200a, which is a nano ITX case. So we're going into small form factor today. Now, I kind of look at small form factor every 10 years or so. And every 10 years ago, I kind of dabble in it, and then I go, you know what, I'd much rather build ATX, and I leave again. However, a lot has changed since I was last on the small form factor scene. There are far better motherboards available, there are far better power supplies available, and there are better cases that can better fit big power supplies and graphics cards in them and still be fairly compact. So let's see what's changed. This is by no means the smallest ITX case that money can buy by a long shot. However, theoretically, this case should offer the best of both worlds. Now, this case popped up in the Adamant IT Discord some time ago. People were talking about ITX and someone posted a picture of this case, and I was like, that's adorable and I love it. And then one of my patrons, whose name will be in the pinned comment down below if they want to be known, very generously donated the money to buy this one to take a look at. And so I was like, okay then, I guess we're buying a P200a. So here it is. I've been sitting on it for a while. So tonight I'm going to build it up and we're going to check it out. So let's start with a walk around of the case. As you can see, we've got tempered glass side panel. We've got front airflow with, I think those are two 120mm fans. We'll take a closer look in a sec. And then we've got a side panel that's also got an intake or an exhaust vent there, depending on how the case is set up. And round the back, we've got space for a full ATX power supply, your ITX motherboard, and up to 3 slots for your graphics card. And you may be saying, well, if you've got a 3-slot graphics card in there, where is that going to get its airflow from? Because it's going to be up against the bottom of the case. And therein lies the bottom vent. The entire bottom of this case is vented. So if you've got a big graphics card in there, it's literally just intaking from the bottom of the case. Now, I'm not a big fan of intaking from underneath the case. It's why I infamously mount my power supplies fan side up. However, if you're running ITX, you're probably putting this up on a desk. And if you're putting your computer on the desk, then intaking from the bottom is far less of a crime. If your computer is on the floor, you should not be bottom intaking. However, these things are designed to stand up on a desk because they're small, so you can. That then also does slide out, I believe. It looks like it goes out the front, so we'll see how easy that is to remove in a moment. The side panel is toolless entry, and it just pulls off. So there's a little grabby bit around the back here, and if I just stick my fingers in there and there we go, that just pops off like so, and then it lifts out. I'm okay with that. It's a little bit nerve-wracking because when you want to remove that, just pulling there, you've kind of got to brace your finger against it and like be ready, and there's not a lot to get your fingers behind there. So it's not a perfect solution. I've seen better. But at the same time, I've said it before about other cases, I appreciate the fact that they've tried to do something other than just the 4 thumb screw design, which I really dislike, and I don't know anyone who does actually like, because the 4 thumb screws are just a nuisance to remove. So yeah, props for trying something that's a bit less conventional. And again, toolless entry means that you don't have to take out any screws or anything like that. Very nice. Let's put that to one side before I break it. Back panel is very similar. We've got 1 thumb screw to secure this guy in place, and then that also just pops out in the same way. So you can see we've got this panel here. It doesn't have any kind of filter on it, but this is quite a fine mesh. So theoretically, as with the front panel, you don't need to filter this because it's already fine enough. So that kind of gives you access back here, and we've got some pop-out covers there. So we'll take those off in a sec and just see what we actually get for removing those and if you can actually do anything with this vent. I'm kind of curious about that myself. We've got some cable hooks here. so you can hook everything in place, and quite a lot of cable dump space actually. This is a very shallow back panel area. There's very little space between the back of the motherboard tray and the side panel. So in order to give you somewhere to bury cables, we've got an inset part here, which is quite a good use of space. And by doing that, they've managed to minimize the width of the case while still letting you put in fairly large coolers. So again, they're maximizing what you can fit in this box. The idea is no compromise. You've got the tiny motherboard, but with all the big components on it. So if we remove these little plastic inserts here, what does that actually do for us? So these inserts have got screw holes on them for 2.5-inch drives. So you can put 2.5-inch drives or RGB controllers or fan controllers or something like that on those, which is a good way to showcase them actually. So that's a neat touch. And when removed, that does actually give space to mount a couple of 120mm fans there. So you could go for a full 240mm setup there. You're not going to fit a radiator in there with front fans as well, I don't think. You might be able to. Yeah, if you've got a really compact radiator, that might go in there, but man, that's going to be tough. It's theoretically possible. Not sure if I would advise it. It's kind of one of those, if you're a mad lad and you want to do mad lad things, you certainly can though. So make of that what you will. But that's surprisingly versatile. I didn't realize that was there initially. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to put these back on for now. I like the fact that we've got these blanking plates there so you can actually make that entire ventilation point disappear if you want. Lots of cases that have a side mount option for water cooling radiators and stuff like that. If you're not using it, it's very much an empty hole and you feel obliged to put fans there because otherwise there's just a hole there. So I like the way this has been designed. That's very good. Additionally, if you are using that, we've also got this plate here for 2.5-inch drive mounts. So you can stick a couple of 2.5-inch drives back there if you're not using these. Out of the box though, there are no 3.5-inch bays at all. There is an optional drive cage that you can buy to mount up the top here, but out of the box, no 3.5-inch support whatsoever. So to be honest, on a modern meta build, I don't consider this to be a big deal because really everyone is doing either 2.5-inch SSDs or M.2 SSDs. So I don't really think that's particularly an issue. But if you were buying these hoping to do a SSD and big hard drive approach, this is probably not the case for you because by the time you've put that cage in there, that's kind of going to spoil the setup in my opinion. I don't think this thing is intended to have 3.5-inch hard drives in it at all. You can do, but it's not really what they want to do with it. Another thing that I also forgot to mention though is we do also have this port at the back and you can buy a vertical graphics card mount to put there, which allows you to sit your graphics card out in the middle too. So theoretically, you could run side radiator, a front radiator, and a vertical graphics card and do a fairly exotic setup in here. On the Phanteks website, they show quite complicated configurations. Not sure that's what I would do with this, but it can do it, which is the interesting part. This would definitely be a great case for showcasing a big, huge graphics card because the length of it is almost as long as a regular case. For my size comparison, I'm going to put it next to my Corsair 220T. This is always my litmus test for whether a small case is actually small or not, because the 220T takes a full-size ATX motherboard and has almost no compromises. It's a bit tight to fit everything in, but it will go in there. And as you can see, the Phanteks is actually ever so slightly longer than the Corsair is, and it's also just a little bit wider than the Corsair is. However, it's a good few inches shorter. And when you've got your computer up on your desk, that makes a big difference to how the case appears in size. But you've also got to remember that in order to get those couple of inches off the top, we've gone down not just to micro ATX, but all the way down to ITX. So we've made a huge drop in motherboard size in order to save that height. So it's kind of up to you if you're willing to make that sacrifice or not. There's a reason why I don't like ITX, and this is basically it. However, obviously everyone has preferences on what they want from their computer. So I'll leave it to your decision as to whether you like the size of this or not. Finally, for the case walk around, we've got the front panel, which is all the way down the bottom, once again reinforcing the idea that this case is supposed to be up on the desk, not on the floor. It's okay. We've got a good selection of USB. We've got a couple of Type A ports and a Type C. So they haven't done a Corsair here and sacrificed one of the Type A ports on there. They've put in both and a Type C. So you get the best of both worlds. If you're still a Type A person, then you've got a couple of Type A's. And if you've got some Type C stuff, you can use that as well. So top marks there. We've got a combo headphone and microphone headset jack, which is basically standard issue these days. And we've got a couple of buttons for the built-in lighting controller. No reset button. Power button is up on the top. Reset button would be nice, or perhaps the option to have one of those lighting buttons be a reset button. But again, reset is just not in vogue on modern cases at the moment. So make of that what you will. I don't consider it a deal breaker, but I do think it's a nice to have. So with that tour out of the way, let's actually build this up and see what it's like to build in and what it looks like when it's actually fleshed out. So I'm going to start with the power supply on this. I've got a Corsair TX power supply. It's a 550M, so this is semi-modular, this power supply. I would not advise approaching this case without either a semi-modular or a fully modular power supply, or an SFX power supply. It has an ATX mount on the back, and we put in the power supply by removing this plate, mounting that on your power supply and then feeding that in. Your SFX power supply may come with an adapter that then makes this hole smaller to put the SFX power supply in. And that's going to give you more dump space around the power supply. However, theoretically, we should be able to fit in a full-size guy. But as I say, don't come at this thing with a non-modular power supply. I think you'll have a bad time. It'll probably all go in there, but you're not going to get a very nice cable tidy job. I've opened up the accessory box just to get some screws out. And we've got a modest selection of screws. We've got some metrics, some imperials. We've got a spare thumb screw, which is nice. And those are all in a couple of different designs. They're not sorted, it's just a handful. So if you're looking to build up a lot of collection, that's not going to be from here, but it looks like they've got everything we need. We've also got the this bracket here, which is for the vertical graphics card mount. So what you would do is you'd put that guy down there. That would screw in there-ish somewhere. And that provides a plate for you to sit the graphics card on, so it's not hanging off the back of the case. So that's there. You don't get the actual flex ribbon cable or anything like that though, so that is a separate accessory. There's no discussion for fan up or down on this one. Power supply goes at the top of the case with the fan pointing into the case. So it is going to double up as part of your exhaust system as well, which is fine. Power supplies don't mind a little bit of hot air going through them. They're completely okay with that. Unless you've got a really awful power supply, they don't kick out a lot of heat. That's what the 80 plus rating is all about. That's your guaranteed efficiency. Right, let's feed this in. I'm not a big fan of these adapter plates that you have to mount on power supplies. It's another thing to lose, and they're always a bit fiddly, and I can always not help but think that there was probably a way in which they could have avoided using it. But it's there, we'll use it. So around this side now, I'll feed through the cables we've got. Lengthways, I reckon you could go up to 170 millimeters with the power supply. Maybe 180 if you do some ugly turns with the cables. But this guy's 190 millimeters long, and the cables are never going to get through that hole there. It's just going to cover up that access port completely. And I mean, sure, you could just have all your cables just go bleh into the case, but not going to look pretty. This power supply I've got is a 150 millimeter power supply. Yep, 150 mil. So that guy fits in super easily. So now I can work on where I want my cables to go. Let's pull back this Velcro tie. Again, being a Phanteks, we've got lots of cable tie backs everywhere. We've got the Velcro ones here, and we've got these little metal tabs here and here, which come off with thumb screws. So I'll just take these out and I'll put them in at the end of the build just to hold everything in place. Marks off for not being able to fit the CPU 8-pin through the hole where the CPU 8-pin goes. Come on, guys, this hole is here specifically for putting this connector through. I'm sure I can wrangle it in there, but this should not be a struggle. I seem to say this often, but whenever I'm building in cases like this, it does make you think, did someone actually test this? Did they give it to someone and say, can you please try and build a computer in this and tell us if you have any trouble? There we go. Splitting my connector, managed to fit it through. But, So you can see how I've now buried the ATX and the CPU power lead in this void up here. There's some more space to fit another cable or two up there, but because of the beefiness of the ATX 24 pin, we're filling that up quickly. So a little bit of planning is required, and I might have to do a little bit of tinkering around with that when I get to the actual cable tidying. Let's arrange roughly how my front panel is going to be. So these pre-plumbed wires are all a bit hectic because we've got RGB, and RGB doubles the number of cables in the computer, for better or for worse. I'm going to quickly refer to my motherboard and just check what cables are going where. So ATX to the top, everything goes to the side. Nothing goes to the bottom on one of these. Fair enough. So everything basically goes in through there. Thankfully, we've got just enough space here that it looks like I'll be able to bury the front panel stuff here instead of trying to take it up to the top and then back down again. I don't actually have Type-C on the motherboard that I'm using, so I'm going to leave that disconnected. If you don't have Type-C, you can get adapters that will convert a 3.0 header to a Type-C header. However, I've only got one 3.0 header as well. In fact, that might be a problem that a lot of boards will have. So when you're picking out your motherboard for this, if you do want to use that Type-C header, just make sure you've double-checked you've actually got a 3.0 header and a Type-C header. Because on an ATX board, that wouldn't be unreasonable. But on an ITX board, where there's so little room on them, that's actually quite a tall order. I need my motherboard in place now so I can see where things have actually got to go. So I'm putting in this tiny little B450i Aorus from Gigabyte. And this is a very cute little board. I picked it up for not a lot of money, and it should be perfect for a modest build. And the standoffs are metric. Front audio is all the way over there. We've got to reroute this guy. Let's take him out. It's occurred to me that with no hard drive LED and no reset switch, the only front panel header we've got is the power button. The power LED on this is RGB because this has the DRGB controller. So we literally have just one noodly boy. One singular noodly boy. Let's get that guy sorted out. We're going to need to get some SATA power in here. Even though I'm not fitting any SATA drives, I've got a SATA power connector for the RGB system. So that we will still need a chain in here. Not a big deal. That will all get buried in this channel and the void anyway. I've got to find a home for these two case fans as well. And we've also got a couple of RGB headers. We've got this guy who is so this one here with the pins on it, that's a daisy chain. So this is an output to go to additional RGB fans or an RGB strip. So we'll leave that guy capped off. And then this dude with the sockets on it, this is going to go into the motherboard's ARGB header, which means the motherboard can send an ARGB signal to the fans. It's up to you if you use this guy or not. It's not critical. The case will have some built-in presets, some of which will probably be really nice. And I'll probably be using the built-in ones. But I'll connect this guy up just for demonstration purposes. If I've actually got an RGB header. Yeah, this board's got RGB Fusion, so it better have. There's our RGB header. I've only got a single chassis fan header on this motherboard, unfortunately. We've got CPU fan header there, and then we've got a chassis fan header down here, and that's my lot. This isn't a massively high-end board. It's just good enough, basically. So I'm going to lob in this double fan splitter, which will allow me to connect up two fans to one header. Most headers are good for an amp, and typically a 120mm fan is going to be about 1/3 of an amp. So you're usually good to have 3 fans on one header. So a dual fan splitter, no problem at all. One thing I do like is the front fans that have come with this thing are actually PWM fans, which is very uncommon. It's very uncommon for a case to have 4-pin PWM fans as standard. So big marks up for that. It's not critical. 3-pin fans are perfectly serviceable. It's just 4-pin fans are better. That side panel wasn't too bad. I crammed the cables in there pretty good, and that side panel went on without too much hassle at all. Let's do a bulge check. We've got a little bit of bulge. Nothing too terrible. Stick the thumb screw in there. That's completely tolerable. I could spend an hour going to town on those wires. However, obviously, being a review build, this thing's getting taken to bits tomorrow. So I'm not going to go mad with the cables. This is the most excessive looking M.2 heatsink ever. Double-sided. Spared no expense with the SSD for this. Right, and we need to do a little bit of cable wrangling here because our graphics card wants to go there. And unfortunately, my audio cable is in the way. Now, there is a little gap right here where you can run cables underneath PCI cards. So I'm going to bring that in like that, put a new twist in the cable, and just dive back into the plug. And I'm going to drop in my 1660 Super. We can fit in bigger graphics cards than this, but I'm not unboxing a bigger graphics card than this. Right, now we just need something to cool the CPU. Now, I could lob on a Wraith Prism, which will do the job, and it will just sit there. But I feel like that's missing the point of this case. This case, the reason why this case is long is that you're supposed to be able to fit water cooling in it as well. Now, the catch is, ideally you want a 240mm water cooler for this, but I don't have any lying around. All I have is my 280mm water cooler. Will it go in? Hoses down for maximum street cred. Huh, no. Okay. What about hoses up for hate in the comments? Go on. Go on. Go on. Oh, you know it would. Okay. Now, the problem here is we've got 140mm rails up front for 140mm fans, but the top button blocks a 280mm rad from going there. So this will not officially fit, and ideally I need to be going in with a 240mm radiator, but I don't have one. So I'm going to ghetto mount this just so you can see what it looks like with a all-in-one water cooler fitted to it. But this is going to be kind of jank, so bear with me. It'll look good for the pictures though. It is not a question of who will let me, but rather who will stop me. Incidentally, that's how you get to the front tray for the lower dust filter. Okay, let's turn it on. Power at the back. Bam. Bam. That was the most unconvincing power button ever. May have jammed that slightly. And we have post. Therefore, I win. I'm going to rearrange this all into something that looks very pretty now. That's a tidy little build. I like it a lot. I've only done ITX once or twice, and this was definitely a very pain-free ITX. Back of the case is a little bit cramped where the header wires and power cables were fine. Header wires, there's quite cramped down there. They could do with, I'm not sure. It needs a little bit more space. Maybe if I'd spent some more time on cable tidying, it would have been a bit easier back there. I think I needed to clip out all of the stock cable ties and just redo it all myself so I could reroute some of the wires elsewhere, because by default they'll just grab all of the cables and put them into a single bundle, and that's not always the best way to go. If you can split into at least 2 bundles, you'll immediately make your life a lot easier. However, the end results look really good. It was very easy to get some nice open space in the middle. We've managed to cram in an obnoxiously large AIO, which technically does fit. However, the top of my radiator is just touching the bottom of the power button circuit board, and I needed to do just a little bit of jiggling just to make it so I could actually push the power button properly. So yes, technically you can fit a 280mm radiator in there, but don't. Just put a 240 in there. Yeah, go for a 240. That's my advice. But everything else looks great. I love the mesh front with the dual 120mm fans in there. They look great. I've got them on the Rainbow Wave at the moment, which is part of the built-in effects. The built-in effects on this are actually very simple and very good. What I'll do, I'll push the buttons a couple of times. We've got a mode button and a color button. So if I press the mode button, we've got a very slow breathing effect, which goes from not quite off to full brightness, which is nice. I like the way it doesn't fully go out because you don't want them to turn off completely. So that's a nice touch. And if I press the color button, we can have that in any color we want. So we got 7 color RGB there, including white as well if you just want that. So easy peasy. Let's just switch over to green. That'll do. And if I push that again, we've got these nice little spin effects. And this is a really nice effect because it adds just a little bit of life to the fans without anything too obnoxious. And it demonstrates the ARGB functionality as well, which I really like. Again, that can be in any color you want by pressing the color button. We've also got this nice little pinwheel effect. The red's a bit strong. Let's have that in white, I think. There you go, there's white, and we've got this pinwheel effect, which I also quite like. That's a nice effect to leave it on as well if you want just a bit of movement. And then finally, we've got just static color. So if you're like, I don't want any flashing, I just want light, bam, static color. Again, press the color button, and that can be in whatever color your heart desires, as long as it's one of the 7 color RGB colors. So that's the RGB on it. And once again, if I plug in that ARGB header like I did during the build, it will then automatically receive a signal from the motherboard. If the header is connected, it's in motherboard control mode. If you want to manually override it, you have to disconnect the header. So it's not quite as good as some of the built-in controllers I've seen, where you can long press the mode button, or there is a specific input mode. So if you want to, like, if you want to do party tricks and change it just to show off your case, you have to actually unplug the header to use the mode and color buttons. But that's not the end of the world. Realistically, you're probably going to decide what you want to do fairly early on in the life of the computer. If you're going to tie this into everything else, this motherboard does have an LED strip down the side there. You can see that white line there. Those are RGB LEDs on the back of the motherboard. So I can, if I plug into that, I can have that synchronized with the fans as well. And then obviously a nice finishing touch with this would be to add in an extra RGB fan at the back here. So you've got another 120mm exhaust, which would be a good idea. And you can plug that into the daisy chain connector that I pointed out during the build. Or you could just you could put an LED strip in here somewhere, along the bottom, up the side, along the top, wherever you want basically, and just get some wash light in there. Although if you're not running water cooling, you'll get some splash light into the case from the front ones, and if you stick another fan at the back, you'll get splash light in from there, and that can also do a modest amount of lighting in the case as well for quite a subtle lighting effect. So there's lots of options here, and because it's got that ARGB header that is optional, or the built-in one, you can do whatever you want. If your motherboard doesn't have ARGB, then you've got the built-in controller. If it does have ARGB, you can synchronize it with everything else. So I like that very much. Also, incidentally, the power button on top, that has got an RGB LED on it as well. It's not the brightest RGB LED I've ever seen. It's a bit of a novelty, but it's the power button. Who really cares? So yeah. So apart from a couple of really minor hang-ups, I've got no major complaints with this thing. It's a very well-designed case. You know, there's a few holes that need to be slightly bigger, and also the cable void for, as I mentioned, the cable void for the front panel headers, I don't know how to fix that, but it could do with being just slightly bigger. I wasn't putting in drives. If I was trying to put in 2.5-inch SSDs, it's going to get pretty hectic round the back. So if you're going M.2 Hero with this and you're just going to throw in a 1 or 2 terabyte M.2 SSD, I've got a 1 terabyte one in here, then you'll have no problems at all. If you're wanting to put in extra drives, which are going to bring in more cables, that's when things are going to start getting pretty busy and you're going to start running into cable tidying headaches. With this build that I've done, I didn't have any major problems, and it was actually a fairly quick build. I was done in probably about an hour, I think. And, you know, I wasn't rushing, but I wasn't exactly taking my time either. So past that, though, I do like this. This is an ITX case that I would actually consider using. It begs the question, as I mentioned when I did the comparison to the 220T, it begs the question, is it really small enough to be worth the ITX sacrifice? That's a difficult question. If it weren't for the fact that there's loads of really good ITX motherboards out there, I would say absolutely not. This thing is too big for an ITX case. You may as well buy a compact ATX or even micro ATX and just have less trouble. But then the other thing as well is that micro ATX cases are a bit hit and miss as well. So if you're looking for something that just doesn't quite have the same dominating height as a normal ATX case, this thing is brilliant, and you can still put in basically whatever you want. However, if you're looking for the true small form factor experience, then this isn't the smallest guy in the world. Then again, if you're building SFF, you probably also want to have something that doesn't take a lot of space on the desk or is easy to carry around. This is both of those things. So past that, I think it does what it sets out to achieve, and you get all the cool perks like the airflow and the RGB of a bigger case. Price-wise, this particular spec with the DRGB controller and the fans that come as standard, I believe I paid about £90 for this. That's off the top of my head. I'll put prices on screen for current pricing and also this one in case I got that wrong. I think it's a good price. When it comes to smaller cases, quite often you can pay quite a lot for ITX, and you seem to be paying more for less metal, if you see what I mean. I didn't get that sense with this. Yeah, you can get bigger cases for the same money, but the thing you've got to ask yourself is, does the case achieve the objectives that it set out with? This case is designed to be a compact case that has got all the compactness of ITX while still giving you room for AIO water cooling, big graphics cards, good cooling, ATX power supply, and so on and so forth. There's not a lot of cases that can do that. And also it was very easy to build in as well. For the price I paid for it, I think it's well priced. The quality is there as well. Phanteks know what they're doing. All the panels line up, everything clicks in nicely, everything's got nice little touches. You've got the cable tiebacks on there, you've got nice screws, it comes with the bracket. It's you know, they haven't cheaped out anywhere. So from that perspective, I think this is well priced. So I like it a lot. Thank you once again to my Patreon supporters for funding this. And if you like this case and you're thinking of buying one, I'll stick Amazon affiliate links in the description down below. And if you buy one through that link, I get a small kickback as well. Or if you want to buy anything else, you can click on that link and go and buy whatever you want. As always, my support links are also in the description down below for my Patreon, my Discord, my Instagram, and my Twitter. And of course, stick around for the end card if you want to see something else to watch. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye for now.